But to me, it's insane. So when you ask the question, how does this affect Canada? Well, when you realize that CBC News, CTV, Global, you name all of our news organizations, all of them, it's like they're following the CNN narrative. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why is there even a narrative? And we're here because it's about, CCP, Communist, Chinese Party. And they are so involved with suppression of news or information in their own country. It's naive to believe as Canadians that it doesn't reach into our own soil.
End the tyrannical CCP. That was the message said loud and clear by protesters who gathered near Vancouver's Consulate General of the People's Republic of China this past Saturday. Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News, and recently I attended the rally calling for end of the tyrannical Communist Party of China. Around 40 of the rally's protesters gathered along the sidewalk of Granville Street, many of whom carried banners warning Canadians about communism, the Chinese Communist Party, and its involvement with COVID-19. Also, in addition to those demonstrating on the sidewalk, some protesters remained in their vehicles waiting to take part in a car parade after the rally's main speeches. They too had similar messages, except their messages were strapped to the roof of their vehicles. The invitation for the protest said the purpose was celebrating 364 million people quitting the Chinese Communist Party and its affiliated organizations and calling for peacefully dissolving this wicked regime. After the speeches, the protesters, mostly consisting of Falun Gong practitioners, members of the Free Hong Kong movement, and the Free Taiwan movement, began their car parade. Protesters with the anti-CCP signs drove through Vancouver, Burnaby, and Richmond so that more people would heed their warnings. I spoke to some of the protest attendees and speakers, and this is what they want Canadians to know.
Ever since the CCP took power in China, hundreds of millions of people have suffered under its endless deception and brutality. The CCP has plundered the ancient land of China, and now its deceit allows the coronavirus to spread, affecting every one of us.
So this is basically a rally to end the Chinese Communist Party and to tell people the truth about the tyranny and the violence that the Chinese Communist Party has committed on people around the world, and how they've covered up the virus and lied about the virus and how it's caused thousands of lives and caused economies around the world to collapse. So it's to gain awareness and also encourage people to distance themselves from the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, so that they don't go down with its demise.
I'm from China, mainland. I think every Chinese has the responsibility to say something to the government and to the world, right? So I've been here for a long, almost more than 10 years. So I know what is happening in China. So as a Chinese or as a global person, I think we need to standing out to say something to the public, say something need to stop. Some bad things and evil things need to stop.
China has a 5,000 year civilization. That's the longest civilization in the world. But when communists came into power in 1949, what they did is started to destroy traditional Chinese culture and replace it with communist ideology, the materialism, the atheism. And they used that, they launched a systematic movement campaign to destroy all kinds of religion from China, and then and now indoctrinate society with this communist ideology, because they want to control the power by controlling the minds of the people.
What do you guys want other Canadians to know?
The CCP is evil, He persecuted many persons in different countries. So we hope CCP will falling down soon. Yeah.
Looked it up, and Google, any search engines bury this kind of stuff. There's zero information on here. It's like you don't want to always say, oh, I believe in conspiracy theories, but there 100% is suppression of anything that goes against anything to do with China. It's actually kind of crazy. Like you wouldn't even believe it unless you actually were actively looking and went, how come this isn't showing up?
Some people are saying that communism is coming here and that we're under tyranny now. What's your opinion of that?
Well, clearly communism is here because China has really close ties with Canada. So whether it's business, whether it's government, whether it's even freedom of speech, China even has set up schools here called Confucius Institutes to spread their propaganda. So it's very much in our backyard, even suppressing free speech. For example, a lot of the human rights issues that are happening in China can't be reported in mainstream media because they have connections to China with their advertising contracts. So it affects us. And clearly with the virus, because China lied for so many weeks and covered up the virus, and even though they locked down Wuhan, they actually let flights exit the area to spread around the world. So it's clearly cost a lot of Canadian lives.
So how many people are we talking about? How many Chinese people are walking away from the Communist Party in China?
Now in China, there's a Quitting Communist Party website. Over 315 million people has registered there to announce their quitting CCP membership or affiliate organization. So this is a huge, it's actually a movement. It's an enlightenment movement happening in China. It's happening very quickly and happening peacefully. This is I think this is historical moment. People are going to see, the whole world is going to see Chinese people is going to get rid of communists by their own power or by their own willingness through this peaceful way to resolve this Communist Party. When people show their willingness, when people show their power, their voices, when people show that I don't want to be part of you, that's the end of communism.
So for people who don't have strong ties to China, how can we simplify your message for them? What would you have to say? What do they need to be aware of?
Okay, so do you know there's a group of people over there? They are protesting. Those people, they are from a religion group. They are Falun Gong practitioners. And those people in China have been organ harvesting about 21 years now. And I don't see any mainstream media report their suffering. So, I mean, if globally, if the people from global, they can aware what is happening to them, so probably you will know how evil CCP is.
For example, I think her name's Li Mengyan. She just came out and said, hey, I was like working in Hong Kong as a virologist, I believe.
Yeah, a doctor.
Yeah, a doctor. And she came out and said, I have all the proof to show how the genome sequencing of this virus can show a fingerprint that was created in a lab. And instantly, Twitter, Facebook, gone. Like they canceled all her accounts. The only people covering that is, I think, Fox News, Tucker Carlson spoke to her.
And what about the belief that if people do speak out, maybe not Chinese Canadians, but if other people speak out against China's government, that it's almost racist?
Well, the thing is, for example, when Nazi Germany persecuted the Jews, it isn't racist to say that Nazi Germany is wrong because that's the government that conducted violence and persecution to the Jews. Same with Chinese Communist Party. It is a party who's ruled China for the last 70 years, and it was an import from Europe, actually, and they took over China.
The Communist Party doesn't equal to the country. This is a different concept.
Or the people, right?
Yeah, the people. China is about the people, the culture, the history, the land. But the communist is just a party. It doesn't represent China, although they claim to be. But they were never elected. They impose themselves to Chinese people. And now a lot of people start to weaken that, particularly what's happening in Hong Kong now. It's really make people think about it.
So sometimes there's a message that if anybody says anything about China being responsible for the pandemic, it can be parroted as something that is racist.
Oh, I got it.
What's your thought on that?
Okay. Yeah, I think the Chinese, and the CCP is all different. Because Chinese people, they are victims. they've been brainwashed about 70 years, 70 years. And then they have lots of misleading, I can say all of the information in China is misleading information. And you don't know the truth, what is happening around the world. So I mean, for Chinese people, and the country is totally different. But for my opinion is, we only want the CCP, take down the CCP. We don't want the CCP exist in China or in the world anymore. But China and Chinese people, they're all lovely people, right? They're good people. So they're just being brainwashed. I think it takes time to, they will get aware in the future soon. They will know.
But to me, it's insane. So when you ask the question, how does this affect Canada? Well, when you realize that CBC News, CTV, Global, you name all of our news organizations, all of them, it's like they're following the CNN narrative. And then you have to ask yourself, well, why is there even a narrative? And we're here because it's about, CCP, Communist, Chinese Party. And they are so involved with suppression of news or information in their own country. It's naive to believe as Canadians that it doesn't reach into our own soil.
So what do you think your number one message as a group is for all the Canadians out there concerned about COVID-19?
I think that it's important for us to end our relationship with the Chinese Communist Party and distance ourselves, because they will continue to lie and cover up the situation of the virus and endanger the rest of the world. So I encourage everybody to go to nccp.com to learn more about the Chinese Communist Party's cover-up, and also sign the petition to end our relationship with the CCP.
Do you think anything like this is possible for Canada? Do you think that type of leadership that's in China is a possibility for us here?
Sorry.
Do you think that the communist control over in China, do you think that's something that we could ever see happening here in Canada?
Yeah, of course. If our government, the Canadian government, they don't do anything about this relationship with Canada, with Chinese government, so I think, their ideology is kind of influenced here, overseas, not only in Canada, Europe, Australia, and America, around the world.
Do you think if we see more anti-CCP protests like this, our government will take notice and change its friendly treatment of China's government? Drea Humphrey for Rebel News. Have you read China Virus by Ezra Levant yet? It's about how Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's loyalty to China is putting Canadians at risk. It's a message that more Canadians need to hear, and you can grab your copy at chinavirusbook.com.